Yee-haw! It's the Old Man Reading from the Kitchen live podcast. Today on Old Man Ranting from the Kitchen, I'm going to talk about Mother's Day and what a special Sunday it is to be on the air with all of you. Today is Mother's Day, and it's a special time for when we take a moment of time to remind us of how wonderful our moms have been throughout our lives. Today, instead of ranting about politics or carrying on about community subjects, I wanted to just explore the history of Mother's Day and what it was all about. So I jumped on the computer and went to the big search engine in the sky, Google, and asked it a very important question. Who started Mother's Day? And here's what I found out. I found out it was very, very interesting how it all got started in Virginia. As history records it, there was a lady by the name of Anna Jarvis, who was actually the founder or starting person of Mother's Day. And the way that it was all in history shown to me was very, very interesting. You see, there was an Anna Jarvis, who back in the days of the Civil War era was a very important woman as far as what she had accomplished in her life to help community. You see, back there, we had a terrible time with tuberculosis and other diseases which swept across the colonies in our country. It was families divided over political beliefs, and health and well-being of children coming into this time period was a horribly black time in the history of our country. The mortality rate of children dying was absolutely unbelievable. And even those who were serving in the war, many of them lost their lives to tuberculosis, which historians have now documented. But in this period of time, there was a special woman who will stand out in history. Her name was Anna Jarvis. Mrs. Jarvis spent her life mobilizing mothers to take care of their children. And she wanted mothers to be recognized for this. In fact, one of the quotations that the historians have found is, quote, "I hope and pray that someone, sometime, will find a memorial Mother's Day commemorating her for the matchless service that she renders to humanity in every field of life." Mrs. Jarvis was very active in the Methodist Church, where in 1858 she ran a Mother's Day work clubs to combat the high infancy rate and mortality rates, mostly due to that disease that we had talked about. It was interesting because what she did is in these work clubs of mothers, she taught sanitation, such things that were so vitally important like boiling drinking water. And it was also her continuous community leadership that helped the organizers provide medicine supplies to sick families when necessary. They would even work to quarantine these families and households and work with them to prevent the spread of this particular disease. Now, Mrs. Jarvis herself had 13 children, died in the Civil War, and historians are pretty sure that this was more likely to the disease than the fighting itself. When Mrs. Jarvis passed away in 1905, she only had 4 children surviving. And one of them was a grief-stricken Anna, her daughter, who promised to fulfill her mother's dream, though the approach to Memorial Day was quite different, the historians have actually noted. You see, Mrs. Jarvis wanted to celebrate the work that was done by her mother. And to her, she was very devoted to her mother. And her motto was, Mother's Day was for the best mothers who ever lived, your mother. Anna Jarvis believed in her heart that this was a special time, and it was what she had promised her mother that she would succeed in doing. 3 years after Mrs. Jarvis' death, the first Mother's Day was celebrated in Andrews Methodist Church in Virginia. Anna Jarvis chose the second Sunday of May simply because it was close to the 9th of May, the day her mother had passed away. Anna handed out hundreds of white carnations during the service, her mother's favorite flower, to all the mothers who had attended. Unfortunately, the huge success of what had happened during that particular memorial had, shall we say, added a commercial appeal to a particular holiday. Even though Anna never wanted that day to become commercialized, it did very early. So that the floral industry, the greeting card industry, the candy industry deserve some of the credit for today's promotion. But this was absolutely not what Anna wanted whatsoever. And when the prices of carnations rocketed, Anna reached out and put a press release condemning the florists. And it was a terrible time in her life. She, by 1920, was arguing and urging people not to buy flowers at all. Mother's Day was never meant to be anything but a memorial to mothers, not a commercialized day for everybody to profit. In fact, it got so bad that Mother's Day turned out to be debate into women's right to vote. And the only one to take advantage of Mother's Day, it seemed, was Anna herself. She refused money offered by florist industries or any industry. Historians say, quote, she never profited from a day, and she could easily have done so. Many admired her for that. Now, by this time, Anna was living with her sister, Lillian, who was visually impaired. And they had actually survived on an inheritance from their father and their brother, Clyde, who ran a taxi cab business in Pennsylvania before, unfortunately, her brother died of a heart attack. Anna went on to spend every bit of money to fight the commercialization of Mother's Day. She campaigned, she donated, she set up groups, she did everything she could to stop the Mother's Day commercialization. One of Anna's final acts, and I think it's probably one of the bravest things that you could ever think of, was that while living with her sister, she was going door to door in Pennsylvania asking for signatures to back an appeal for Mother's Day to be rescinded. Anna felt that once again there was no reason for this to be a commercialized institution for those who would use greed to make money for a holiday that was to remember and to love mothers. You know, it was very interesting also that Lillian soon died, her sister, of carbon dioxide poisoning while trying to light a stove up to heat a rundown house that they were living in. The police claimed that there was icicles actually hanging from the ceiling because it was so cold in the house. Anna herself, God bless her, died of heart failure in November of 1948, never seeing her accomplishment to stop Mother's Day. I don't know what Anna would have to say today if she knew that there were 5 things that a lot of people really don't know about. First of all, Mother's Day isn't always on the same day each year. And in the United States alone, there's more calls on Mother's Day than any other day in the year. Mother's Day is the third highest selling holiday for flowers, plants, and gifts. And the earliest Mother's Day celebration was actually in Greece. Now, this is kind of interesting because the Greek would have spring celebrations in honor of Rhea, the goddess of fertility, the motherhood, and generation. And of course, the final thing that a lot of people remember, but would never know the actual facts behind it, that Mother's Day is the busiest day of the year for restaurants. According to the National Restaurant Association, in 2018, there was 87 million adults made plans to go to a restaurant on Mother's Day. I often wonder how Anna would have felt at the conclusion of her lifetime. All that money that she gave away, all those opportunities that she had, because she believed that Mother's Day was for mothers, to honor mothers, to make mothers the special people that they were in the eyes of America. And what did we do? We capitalized it and made it into, well, as the podcast mentioned, one of the biggest days for the florist and gift industry. To Anna, you are a hero. And to all those mothers out there that have done such a wonderful job, who have cared for us, who have taken care of our children, who have made the children of America stronger and better,
all I can say is God bless you, and may all your days be full of love.